Welcome. Thanks for joining me on this Sunday night. Hey, it's warming up here. Thank God. Oh, since we talked about a little warm up, before we get to my guests, I got a couple of CPAC clips I want to play. You know what? Let's just play this one real quick. This is Chris Wright. He is our new Department of Energy guru. He's the head. You got to just love this guy. He came from Liberty Energy Company, his company. He started it. And he took North Face to task, trying to explain to them that 90% of their products involve fossil fuels. Well, here he is again on the value of fossil fuels. I just got to play this because it's so good.
I've spent, after schooling, my entire career as an entrepreneur in energy. Why? It's energizing. And also, it's what controls the limits in what's possible in our lives.
He's
Not
talking
just
about energy.
us, but everyone around the world. We had 30-year global life expectancy at birth throughout all of human history, all the way up to less than 200 years ago. Today, it's 73 years, from 30 to 73. Two things catalyze that change: the growth of human liberty, bottom-up social organization, what we're all passionate about, and the explosion in available energy from hydrocarbons. These two things just transformed the human condition. I am not everyone in the world has access to the liberty and energy we have. But in our own country, both of those concepts have been under great threat in the last 4 years. Maybe that's why my political career started. Liberty under threat, energy resources under threat.
Well, there's so much to talk about just in that clip that relates to the state of Illinois, because you know what? Hydrocarbons, a.k.a. fossil fuels, are under threat in this state. And the other thing that's under threat in this state, your pocketbook. Because after Pritzker's shameful budget address, you can expect that there's going to be higher taxes. Here to discuss that and give his reaction to the budget address, somebody who had to sit in there and listen to it all, is state senator. He used to be state representative, state senator Andrew Chesney. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us tonight on The Real Story.
Hey, Jeannie, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
So, yes, what was your initial reaction coming off of Pritzker's budget address?
Well, I understand why J.B. Pritzker is so forceful on maintaining DEI, because he was a DEI hire, a didn't earn it hire. And he was just awful. I mean, this is a guy that, parks his cash in the Bahamas, doesn't want to pay taxes, but claims everybody else needs to pay their fair share. He's clearly positioning for national office, using this as a stepping stone, and it's reflective in the budget. It's reflective in priorities. And, like I said, got a front row seat at this. And it was just more of the same. $55 billion, no property tax relief, really no relief at all. And, he just can't help but, inside of 30 days already blaming Trump for all the problems of Joe Biden.
Well, did it feel like he was preemptively blaming Trump for a possible loss of revenue to the state of Illinois? And that loss would obviously become because DOJ is becoming more efficient. They're figuring out where the scams are, and they're getting rid of useless programs. And it also comes by just the fact that, hey, look, if you're not going to comply with some of his executive orders, you're not going to get the federal funding. And so apparently you've got a bunch of Democrat congressmen running around giving town halls saying the threat of DOJ, and ginning up a lot of fear amongst their constituents. And, honestly, sorry, but if you're going to continue with trans surgeries on minors, then you shouldn't get federal funding. If you're going to continue to push LGBTQ stuff in the schools, then you shouldn't get federal funding, right?
Yeah, I mean that's where they're going, right? I mean, so this is just a setup to blame Trump, for the shortcomings of the state of Illinois. But what didn't change? It's still going to be a sanctuary state. They're still going to treat illegal immigrants better than they treat their citizens. What didn't change? They're still not going to communicate with federal authorities. What didn't change? They're still going to have the highest property taxes in the entire country. What didn't change? They're still going to have an out-migration of population. The only only population growth that Governor Pritzker can take credit for are the illegal immigrants coming to our towns and absolutely destroying them. And so, if he has done one thing, you have seen an uptick in population, but it's the illegal criminals that are coming into our communities, of course, of which we have to pay for them. And, of course, all the wraparound services that follow along with that. So, like you said, the LGBTQ, they want to get to our kids. They, it's not enough for an adult. They want to tackle the 10-year-old and, want to confuse them through their gender ideology and their gender persuasion. And, they call that gender care rather than gender mutilation. And, it's just more of these progressive leftist policies. And one has to ask themselves, if Governor Pritzker is trying to position for a presidential run, I don't know who he's talking to, because this just does not work in Nevada, Arizona, and the other, Georgia and the other swing states. I mean, nobody is going to be interested in these swing states, these purple states, from a golden spoon governor that has generated none of his own success, that parks his cash overseas and is on this progressive left bend to be relevant. I mean, it's almost embarrassing as a state senator to watch a governor try so hard to be relevant on the national scene.
Oh, yeah, he keeps on doing that. His Twitter feed is full of that, or his X posts are full of that. And he does try to garner some attention here. He craves it, as a matter of fact. But when you talk about growth and growth in the budget, he never gave you any details. Well, he gave a few details, and we're going to go into those in a minute. But one of the details I wanted to talk about is he never told anybody that he's actually, when he does say he's grown jobs. Did you know this? I actually started looking at his budget summary. I was looking for particular information, and I ran across this chart because sometimes I'm a nerd about this crap, or I get obsessed about it because I know he's lying. I want to find the lies. But it had the total state employee headcount, and FY 2024 actual headcount was 53,858. FY 2026 authorized headcount is 61,101. You're up 7,243 employees at the state level in just 2 years. What are they doing?
Well, they're not at work. They're working, if they are working, they're working remotely. And, there's very little accountability. And the reason that Democrats have an interest in growing government is, one, they believe in bigger government, but secondly, many of their union dues go directly to elect them. So they actually politically benefit from a larger government because those same unions contribute overwhelmingly to the Democrat Party. So if, Governor Pritzker's probably not looking at it from a campaign contribution standpoint, because he, for all effective purposes, self-funds. But if you take a look at rank and file Democrats, I mean, the reason that they associate themselves with teachers unions and other labor groups that have been very detrimental to our communities, primarily the teachers unions, not the rank and file as much as the leadership, is because they are funded in overwhelming majorities all throughout this state. I mean, they fund them exponentially more than they do the Republicans. And so they have a vested interest in maintaining a lot of public sector employees throughout the state. And they do that, one, because they believe in big government, but two, there's a campaign apparatus that is deployed every 2 years to keep them elected.
Yeah, I mean, it feels though there's a lot of people that really aren't getting the message, and part of that is because the media doesn't give them the message. But there's a lot of smart people that are just ignoring it. They don't see it. I don't know what they're following. I was telling Kirk Allen's here with me, by the way, from the Edgar County Watchdogs. He's sitting in with me tonight, and I was telling him, I went to this pension town hall in Chicago. And these two women, I started just chatting with them before their presentation. They said, "Don't you just love what Pritzker's doing? He's so good financially. He's just doing so well for us." And I thought to myself, the budget's up 37%, right? 20 new tax fees in his first year in office. I mean, how do we get to people like this, Andrew? How do we make them understand what's really going on?
Well, I think there's a little bit of, the challenge we as conservatives have in Illinois is that the producers, the young and the brightest, many of them are just firing Illinois and moving to states that care about them more, right? And so we're seeing an out-migration of successful people because they're just simply exhausted by the progressive policies. And for those that have not been desensitized, but have tolerated it. You could look at your farmers, you just can't pick up and move a farm, or you have your business, or many people like myself that just love Illinois and love the Midwest. I moved back here, even though the policies are so destructive to the households of the people I represent. How do you get through to those folks? It's certainly a challenge, but you're ultimately, JB, is going to run out of other people's money, and it's going to start having a direct impact more greatly than it is already. So I think we were the only state to borrow money under COVID. So we kind of had that sugar high under COVID for 2 or 3 years. You're starting to see the downturn in revenues. He is going to have a really big challenge with the Progressive Caucus, the Black and Latino caucuses, because they're going to want to fund their priorities, and there's simply not enough in the budget. He has drawn the line in the sand as it relates to having a balanced budget, but then again, they were $3.2 billion projected budget shortfall, and now all of a sudden, miraculously now they have a balanced budget with very little revenue enhancements. I mean, there's certainly some in there, but not what we were expecting. And so there will be a little trickery with the budget and the way they manipulate the numbers, Jeannie, but ultimately you can only do so much, and the fact is, you're not growing as a population. You're seeing an outmigration of successful people, an outmigration of successful businesses, and you're backfilling it with those, in not all cases, but in some cases, those that want sanctuary state status. And so you can see that New York, California, and Illinois are the 3 states that are growing in illegal immigrants, and these folks have to be paid for. And the areas that are losing populations are those same 3 states, and so there is a correlation. The question is what is Governor Pritzker's 2028 plan? Well, we already know he's going to run for president, and he's going to leave somebody to deal with these policies because he's going to be on to the next plan.
I think you're entirely right. And just like I told the audience Friday night, every individual, because the question has always been asked, when's the tipping point? The truth is, it's an individual tipping point. Everybody has their own individual tolerance for crime, taxes, cultural Marxism, paying for people's abortions. They all have their own tipping point that forces them out of the state or forces them to make a change in who they elect. And that's the question, is how many people can you get to tip? Andrew, thank you so much for doing the hard work down there. I really appreciate you coming on the program tonight.
Hey, honored to do it. Thanks for having me on, Jeannie.
You bet. And we'll be right back. This is The Real Story with Jeannie Ives.